Alright, before we get started with this video, I do have a disclaimer for you. So I've been working on this video the last 2 weeks. I had it finished up, I wrote the script, I recorded the audio, I edited the audio, and I put all the video together. It was perfect. And then, as I went to save it so that I could export it out to YouTube, for whatever reason, it crashed, corrupted, and got all screwed up. So that original video that had all those nice edits and a lot of work put into it is scrapped, unfortunately, which totally sucks. And what that means is that this video isn't going to be the best editing job because I just don't have the time to go in and redo everything all nice again like I had it, which is super frustrating because, anytime you put a lot of work into something and then it gets screwed up, it's always going to feel like a huge waste of time, which always sucks. And that's where we find ourselves here. So I just had to give that quick disclaimer. Hopefully you still enjoy the video. I would recommend maybe just listening to it in the background instead of watching it because the edits are going to be pretty low. It's going to be a lot of long clips. But anyway, guys, thanks again for sticking with me. And hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And I'll catch you in 2022. Enjoy the video. Thanks. Alright, stop the music. Stop the music right there. I have an announcement I need to make, and that would be this. I know we're supposed to start off end of the year videos with a lot of gusto and energy as we reflect deeply on the year that was. But despite this being one of my favorite videos of the year to make, I can't muster that kind of enthusiasm in 2021 because not many games were able to stick with me as the year went on. Now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer because there were a lot of terrific experiences this year. It just so happens that I missed out on a bunch of them. I didn't play Deathloop, Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, Returnal, and what else was there? Let's see. Oh yeah, Death's Door, It Takes Two, Resident Evil Village, and Psychonauts 2. They all evaded me through no one's fault but my own. And so when I look back on this year, I think I'll mostly remember the titles I missed while others sang their praise, while still having a few personal favorites to adore. Despite missing out, I felt confident in constructing a personal top 10 games of the year list, but as I finished it up, I couldn't help but feel that the first half of the list didn't speak to me enough to warrant a spot in my rankings. And don't get me wrong, this is by no means some sort of prestigious list that everyone cares about. It's more so a personal exercise in reflection that some of you may happen to enjoy. Hopefully. But because it is such an introspective video, it felt disingenuous to myself to include games that I enjoyed but didn't completely love. And that's not to take away from those games that didn't make the cut. They were still of quality and I enjoyed them, just like many others. So much so that I'm still going to give them an honorable mention. Kena Bridge of Spirits, Hitman 3, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and Far Cry 6 did make my initial list. And the final cut was for Bugsnax, a title that didn't release this year, but one that many folks didn't get to enjoy until 2021. These games were good fun, but my high regards couldn't stick with me as the days went by, and I couldn't find much of a reason to want to revisit them. Because of this, I've trimmed down my list this year to the best 5 titles I experienced. These were games that stood out to me as being my favorites on the year. Not necessarily the best objectively or the highest selling, but instead ones that enthralled me while playing and stuck with me upon completion. And that's always been an important distinction to me as I build these end of the year rankings. Staying power. So often we as YouTubers review games directly after playing them, as is the nature of the beast. Riding the high of an end credit scene can carry over into our writing and perception on the games, Reviews and critiques deliver refined reactions to the games we've played, but they're also quite raw due to how little time is spent between completion and the early stages of video production. It's these end of the year videos then that provide the greatest opportunity to see what titles stood out above the rest in the deep and complex inner workings of our minds. And to me, that's the sign of a great game, when it can stay with you. So with that, I present the best 5 games I played in 2021. At number 5, we have Insomniac's Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Going into this title, I was a bit of a Ratchet & Clank novice. I had played and enjoyed the original trilogy, and I dabbled in a few of the other games since then, but to no avail. Well, after playing this title, consider me all in on what's to come for the franchise. In a game with combat as fun as this, it's crazy that the first thing that jumps out about Rift Apart is its presentation, as it truly felt like the first game that took advantage of the PlayStation 5's more powerful systems. Sure, other games had cut back on load times or ran at 60 FPS, but none of them were doing what this game did. Rift Apart was loading and deloading levels on the fly, which really allowed the concept of traveling between dimensions to flourish throughout this game. On top of that, the visuals on display were immaculate and left me scanning every inch of these maps just to see the detail that had been jam-packed in. And this was true both in moments of peace and in war, as the amount of particle effects this game is able to render is incredible, and it really flexes the power of the new generation. This was seen most in combat, which was the game's real breadwinner. I thoroughly enjoyed these encounters as they provided a lot of pure fun. Their core loop of blasting enemies with your favorite weapons, and then switching to another and cycling through them until all your ammo's out, is done wonderfully here. It's so much fun, and when you throw in weapon leveling into the mix, it only gets better. Combat is chaotic in this title, but it never compromises on providing a power trip for players. Sure, chaos reigns supreme, but you reign supreme over chaos, which always feels good. And while the story wasn't particularly exciting or executed perfectly, it did at least introduce us to a new set of heroes in Rivet and Kit who serve as dimensional counterparts to Ratchet & Clank. They bring a breath of fresh air to the series and will no doubt be a part of this franchise going forward. The series may struggle to find ways to balance out screen time for our old duo versus the new one, but I have full confidence in Insomniac, as they've been putting out hit after hit over the last few years. More than anything, Rift Apart acts almost as a soft reboot for the franchise, in my opinion, as it goes back to its roots and prepares for a new phase in this series. Rift Apart ends up being a wonderful start point full of strong design choices and fundamentals that allows for an engaging experience. However, it's also one that can be easily expanded on, which is super exciting given this game was already such a blast. In my number 4 slot, I'm going with the best indie game I played this year. And for me, that was Dodgeball Academia. This one came out of nowhere, but one look at the hand-drawn art style paired with the promise of playing a childhood classic had me on board from the start. As I booted up the game, I was immediately endeared to the art style, particularly how well the characters were designed and animated. The expressions of each went hand in hand with the dialogue bubbles that manipulated fonts and words, and it resulted in a true understanding of who these characters were as people, regardless of the fact that they didn't have spoken dialogue. Each character acted as a high school cliché, but were injected with enough personality to escape the sensation that they were cookie-cutter characters. Instead, they breathed life into this vibrant game world and made me excited to see what would happen next. A plot focused on the zany antics that kids get into reminded me of an enjoyable cartoon, and it further engaged me into the experience. Each of the game's 8 chapters felt like an episode of a great Netflix show, full of delightful characters, moments of humor, a plot through line, and stakes to be taken seriously. It was one of the best stories I played through in a game this year. But what impressed me most about Dodgeball Academia was how it reinvigorated the game of dodgeball throughout the campaign. Outside of story bits and some very light RPG decisions, Dodgeball Academia's main allure is its combat system, designed around this high school gym class staple. It started off relatively simple by introducing the basic tenets of the game. However, as Dodgeball Academia goes on, more and more elements were introduced to keep the combat feeling fresh. This included variations on the properties of dodgeballs, such as giving them freeze effects, or burn damage, or the ability to stun you. They also manipulated the field at various points to increase the challenge. And on top of that, the player must consider the characters they choose to keep active in combat. Each playable character has skills unique to themselves, and mixing and matching them, along with items to min-max them, created a surprising opportunity to construct builds. All of these components kept the experience refreshing each time I came back to play, as I was able to experiment and find out what worked for me by the time I reached the final match. Besides all this variety though, it needs to be said that combat in this title was simply fun to experience, as it flowed wonderfully. Each match was paced excellently, and there was something inherently satisfying about catching a dodgeball that an opponent launched at you and then returning the favor by clocking them in the face with it. The game feel in Dodgeball Academia was tweaked to near perfection, and this went a long way in ensuring the combat didn't get stale. Overall, this title was super cohesive and well executed, resulting in an experience worthy of being called my favorite indie game of the year. Alright, you got me, okay? Any regular fan of the channel will have seen this one coming a mile away, but you might be shocked to see it this low on the list. At number 3, we have Persona 5 Strikers. I didn't really hear much about this game until late 2020, but when it was announced that Strikers was coming to the West, I was beyond pleasantly surprised. I mean, come on! One of my top 5 favorite games of all time was getting a direct sequel that picked up where the original left off, with new characters, new adventures, and new combat to go alongside the characters that I've come to adore. Sign me up, it was a no-brainer day one purchase. And speaking of day one, I actually have an interesting story to show you how dedicated I was to getting this game. So, one thing about me is that I love to buy physical copies of games. I like having something tangible that I can hold. And so I had this game pre-ordered because I knew I was going to play it right away. And the day came when it released, and I went to go pick it up, and the shipment was delayed by 3 days. And I was like, okay, I can understand why. So I went home and I bought it digitally because I couldn't wait. I had to have Strikers immediately, and I don't regret it at all. Booting up the game and seeing that opener where the gang is reunited after time away felt special, as if the Phantom Thieves were not only welcoming Joker back into their world, but also me. And what a cozy stay it was. The characters, their personalities, and their quirks immediately roar back to life as the gang begins planning out all their adventures for their summer vacation. This first hour of the game, where the gang just took some time to relax and bond without the threat of horrible people, or a global conspiracy, or a vengeful god in sight, was comforting and wholesome. It felt identical to meeting up with friends who you haven't seen for a while. You pick up where you left off and fall right back into the good old days. It was a treat, and I loved it. Of course, when things did get going, the coolness, bravado, and boldness of the Phantom Thieves came back with a vengeance as the gang set out on a countrywide tour to find and stop a series of brainwashings. This provided a gripping starting point that evolved into an interesting and high-stakes story. Despite the narrative's excellent structure and pacing, the true star of the shows are, of course, The characters. I've already alluded to how great it is to spend more time with Ren, Ryuji, Morgana, An, Yusuke, Makoto, Haru, and Futaba, but newcomers like Sophie and Zenkichi hold their weight as well, providing excellent contributions to the thieves. These characters provide a lot of heart and soul to the experience and kept me focused on the mission in serious moments, but laughing along with the gang during moments of hijinks and downtime. And by the game's conclusion, I once again felt an attachment to these characters, and I didn't want to say goodbye. Still, I felt grateful to have more time with them. And I haven't even touched on the Dynasty Warriors' approach to combat and how it affects the experience. While it was by no means my favorite part of the experience, I did appreciate the attempts at something new. In particular, how a completely separate studio was able to translate so many mechanics of the Persona series into this form of fighting. Moving through jails was incredible as they were on a much larger scale than palaces from the base game, and overcoming so many foes with ferocious melee hits and powerful elemental magic was a true power trip. Some overly challenging encounters occasionally stalled the experience, but overall, wiping out so many shadows with a single blow stayed enjoyable throughout the game. If combat had been more my style, this would have been my game of the year, solely because of it affording me more time with a delightful set of characters. And, of course, there's the music too, which is absolutely incredible. Seriously, it's the only video game soundtrack I listen to outside of games. Like, if you see me at the gym, I'm probably listening to Persona 5 music. It's that good. And getting more of it here was definitely welcomed. Out of all the titles on this list, Strikers is the one that I'll probably replay the most in the future. So if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Go out and play Persona 5. And when you're done with that, don't forget about Persona 5 Strikers. It continues the excellence established in the base game while twisting up gameplay in a new direction. And here's hoping that Persona 6 can bear the weight of this incredible set of games. My runner-up for Game of the Year in 2021 is Back 4 Blood. More so because of the personal enjoyment I got from playing with friends, rather than it being an achievement mechanically, narratively, or visually. That's right, I do believe this game is pretty flawed, but that has to do more so with the elements heaped onto the gameplay rather than the gameplay itself. Look folks, you don't need me to tell you how perfect the Left 4 Dead gameplay loop is. Copying it and building something new off of it was a surefire way to create a successful game that folks were going to enjoy. And that's where I find myself, despite the issues I have with this title. This is a video to celebrate games though, not tear them apart. You can check out my upcoming critique for that. But for now, I'll say this. Playing Back 4 Blood feels right, especially with friends. And while part of that is due to game feel, it also has a lot to do with the title's approach to level design. Instead of giving us the standard 5 campaigns to journey through, Turtle Rock elected to change up the formula by offering more objective-based campaigns. This includes campaigns comparable to a boss rush mode, a capture the flag mode, a miniature raid, and more. Now, I'm using those terms in a very light sense, but play the game and you'll see exactly what I mean. It's not always just about getting from point A to point B in Back 4 Blood. Sometimes it's about the steps you must complete along the way, which is an awesome twist. Another big addition to this subgenre comes in the form of a card system that allows for the creation of dedicated builds, which allows for a ton of replayability. Min-maxing characters with hyper-focused builds and improving them with the addition of new cards is engaging. And on the other hand, you can run a bunch of one-sided cards that may hinder your capabilities as well as add more challenge. Regardless of what you choose, you're able to feel the difference cards make while playing through each campaign. You can feel you and your team getting stronger as more cards come into play, but along with that comes increased challenge, as each of the game's 4 acts continuously builds on the difficulty. And for players like myself who are really enjoying the game, the added challenge brought from the advanced difficulty modes provides more content to try to overcome. It not only tests me, but also the people I choose to play with. And I've had a lot of great moments with my friends playing Back 4 Blood. And I've even met some cool new people as well, which is fantastic. What I'm trying to say is that this is a title I see myself continuing to play all throughout 2022. You know how I just said Strikers, I'll probably replay it in the future a bunch of times? Well, this is a game I'm still playing, and I'm gonna keep playing it, because it's just that much fun. It's a living experience, and the promise of future updates only makes my excitement grow. I can't wait to see how new characters and new cards will shake up the experience, and what new ideas and alternate objectives can be brought into the game through new levels. There's a lot of promise here, and if they can iron out some of the issues, the sky is the limit for this title. And in a world where Left 4 Dead 3 doesn't really seem plausible, Back 4 Blood can be praised solely for delivering a new experience that utilizes this iconic gameplay setup. Congratulations, I love this game. It might not be the best out there, but I love it. Throughout this video, you might have noticed that while I thoroughly enjoyed and loved the previous entries, in fact, I just got done saying that about Back 4 Blood, there was an element or two that held each of them back, such as Rift Apart story or Strikers combat. You see, to me, a game of the year must be able to impress consistently in all areas of game design, from gameplay systems to narrative structure to presentation. And no game did that more this year than my number one entry. And so, my game of the year for 2021 is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Much like Ghost of Tsushima last year, this was the title that was able to blend all of its elements together in the most harmonious way, more so than in any other title I played this year. The narrative was an enriching tale of an estranged group coming together and learning what it means to be family. The writing and character development was the best out of any game I played this year, as each member of the Guardians grew subtly and in their own time. This progress was conveyed not only through emotionally resonant scenes, but also during gameplay downtime where the characters explored the environment and the predicament they faced. This sense of character presence carried on throughout the entire experience, which went a long way in endearing me to the characters and making me actually care about them. Seeing each of them overcome their inner demons provided a genuine sense of inner pride, as if I myself was a part of this ragtag group and their growth. By far, this was the best group of characters I experienced this year, and the plot they partook in was a great catalyst for which their growth could channel through. But Eidos Montreal took it a step further than this by having narrative beats bleed directly into the gameplay. There are moments where team members break away from the gang, and because each of them serves a distinct role in combat and exploration, you feel their loss more as a player. Their absence proves to have a tangible effect. Of course, with or without a full squad, combat in this title is spectacular, despite it being relatively simple on paper. It's a third-person shooter with a heavy emphasis on maneuvering and coordinating your companions. Playing as Peter Quill, you can shoot enemies using your elemental blasters while flying around the battlefield. At the same time, you can direct Drax, Gamora, Rocket, and Groot to use their special abilities to deal out heavy damage, to heal up, or to stun enemies. And as you fight, a special meter fills up, and when it's full, you can activate Huddle Up. This was a rallying mechanic that brings the Guardians together for a rousing speech that buffs all their damage in combat, while the tunes of Star-Lord's Walkman drown out the whimpers of your foes. And all of this coalesces to create a worthwhile combat system. It was super fun, and it continuously built on itself. And while gameplay and narrative walk hand in hand throughout Guardians, the cherry on top is the excellent presentation that consistently wows with breathtaking visuals and wonderful music. Eidos Montreal knew they had made a visually stunning experience, and they were keen on flexing what they had developed. As a result, there's tons of gorgeous views that will make you stop just to soak it all in and reflect on how far the team has come. This game easily had the best art direction of any title I played this year, and the music was pretty good too. And it's for all of these reasons that Guardians of the Galaxy is my game of the year for 2021. I honestly can't wait to find some free time to go back and play through it again on hard mode to challenge myself and spend more time with these lovable goofballs. So congrats to Eidos Montreal. You did it! You made the best game that I played this year. Well guys, that wraps things up for the channel in 2021. As I reflect on the year, I'm super proud to see how drastically watch time has improved on the channel from last year. It's clear that my newer approaches to video making are keeping people watching, whether it's in the background as they play their favorite game, or as an insightful listener keen on hearing my thoughts and offering their own. As always, I wish this would translate into a higher subscriber count, but I love the community that we've built here, and seeing familiar faces comment on new videos always brings a smile to my face. I'm grateful for all of your support and time in 2021, and I hope it continues into next year. Hopefully we can expand this great group of people even further. Looking ahead, I'll be kicking off 2022 with a lengthy critique of Back 4 Blood that should be about an hour and a half long, and at some point in the first quarter of the year, I'll be making a commentary on Pokemon Shining Pearl, since those videos have done so well. You can also look forward to reviews and critiques of Pokemon Legends Arceus, Elden Ring, and Horizon Forbidden West, along with a few additional entries in the Psychology of Gaming series. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you all, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Again, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, and as always, have a nice day, and take care.